So this was an adventure which started out just like any normal adventure, walking along in your Minecraft world, looking at the llamas, looking at the water, not really seeing too much and not really expecting too much. But as all adventures start, they start out in a normal way. So I knew from the very get-go that I was very reluctant to start this survival world, but at the same time I knew that there was something strange. You see, when I was mining my first set of trees, I did actually hear some strange sounds. Now at first I didn't really pay attention to it because it was Minecraft. Strange sounds happen all the time. There are many different mobs, there are many different things that happen, but like I said, it was Minecraft, so this was definitely to be expected. What was even weirder was that the saplings were off by a pixel. Now most Minecraft players can't actually notice this fact because you're not someone that plays Minecraft as much as me, but trust me, I can tell you that these saplings were definitely very strange. They were so strange that I didn't even want them in my inventory. All I did was I used the wood, made a crafting table, and then made some of the basic tools. And even whilst making some of the basic tools, I was even hearing some very strange noises. So much so that from time to time, I would look around and see if there was anything wrong with the trees nearby, or any mobs, because at first, like I said, I wasn't really expecting the trees to have any crazy reveals, simply because they're an anatomy object and they don't move whatsoever. Nonetheless, I was very content with my journey. I got my crafting table up and I decided to move on. It was only when I was moving on forward that I noticed that there was some rather larger structures in front of me that were actually not man-made, meaning that they were automatically randomly generated. This means that, so I decided that it will be very interesting and it was definitely very confusing because Minecraft structures definitely don't ever spawn like this. And it was definitely very interesting because Minecraft structures definitely don't spawn like this. As you could all see, I was definitely confused by the large amount of ladders that were placed upon the side of some buildings. It was definitely strange because the builds were actually all the way down into the ground. They were almost around 200 blocks high. It was definitely very confusing, and some of the farms were even 20 to 30 blocks high. It was definitely confusing as to how this was even structurally possible, but nonetheless I decided that before I went on this adventure, I needed some torches just in case, because nighttime was fast approaching, and of course I needed to make sure that I had the necessary materials. Now all I was after was some torches, but again, like I said, I noticed that there were strange noises being played in my Minecraft world. But like I said, it was definitely something that I was starting to get paranoid about, but not so much so that I was truly worried about it. I was mainly worried about how this structure even came to be. So much so that I decided to inquire about this villager. Now at first I was thinking that maybe I could trade my raw pork chops with him, but then he quickly responded with my name. That definitely threw me off guard because how did this random villager know who I was, let alone manage to talk to me? Nonetheless, I brushed it off and then I managed to speak to him. He then said everything is strange, and I was confused because what did he mean by everything was so strange? I mean, I knew we're in a strange world, but what did he mean? Did he mean that this was strange as well, or was he talking about something else inside the world? Because of course I remember even hearing some sounds. So I looked around to see if there was anything nearby other than the random village structures, to see if there was anything I could spot my eye on. To my surprise, there wasn't really anything nearby. Even underneath all the chaos that the village had spawned in, there wasn't anything crazy there. So I decided to talk to this villager once again. Then he said, look at this village spawn. So I guess that was exactly what he was talking about. And that made concrete sense. He said, it's so wild. I'm not sure what's going on. Be careful of the trees. And that was the first moment. So I decided to take another look at the trees because definitely something did feel off about them, but not so much so that I could really truly put my finger on it, because every time I did actually look over at the trees, there wasn't anything that was truly suspicious. I mean, I'd seen videos or adventures where trees were moving before, but this was just something that was out of a sci-fi movie, so I decided to brush that off. But I remember he also told me that I should go upstairs. So when messaging him, I decided that I would go upstairs. Now, what was even more confusing was that there are no stairs here. It was only ladders. But I decided to take some of the food just in case I would need it, and then proceed to go all the way up the actual ladder. Now, it was definitely quite scary going up the ladder because I wasn't exactly sure why it had been created there. Was someone about to knock me off at the top, or was this some kind of cruel joke? Either way, this spawn was definitely very interesting, and I eagerly awaited to see exactly what was at the top, because I knew whatever was going to be there would be definitely interesting, considering this is one of the worst / wildest village spawns ever. Either way, once I got to the top, I realized that not much had really changed, except the fact that this village didn't really have as much villagers as you would expect. I was guessing that many of them had somehow fallen to their death. Now, I decided to explore one village, which interestingly enough actually had a decent amount of information. Once I opened up the village area, it actually told me about a lot of things. They said that 5,000 years ago, the native villagers spawned in on this very plain. All was well and everything was right until one very strange night. Out of nowhere, the eyes of the tree began to come to life. Now that was making the alarm bells ring because I knew that something was wrong. I absolutely knew it. I could sense it from the moment I realized something was acting strange. But I decided to brush it off because I was in a very different mood. I was just excited to explore, but clearly something was wrong and I was going to now get to the bottom of exactly what was going on with these trees. Because the very last sentence said that the eyes of the trees began to come to life. Now, I didn't know trees actually had eyes, but this was something that was going to be a revelation in this adventure. So I decided to look and see exactly what else was going on in this village. And to my surprise, there was actually an entire village that was down there on the side of the mountain. But before I decided to go down the mountain, I wanted to make sure I explored this blacksmith village. You see, blacksmith villages are known for having a very decent source of materials. When I went in there, they had exactly that. 64 torches, a bunch of iron, and I couldn't be more happier. This meant that I could easily afford an iron sword, which I did quickly make, just in case the trees started to attack me, because now I was getting super paranoid. I didn't know what these trees were going to do. Apparently they had eyes, and they had been acting shifty all day. So I decided to talk to this villager, in which he said, "Hello, be careful, at nighttime things get really weird." Now, what was interesting about this comment from this villager was that he said things get really weird, but he didn't say the trees get really weird. So I was guessing that maybe just anything got really weird. So I decided to venture off into the night, making sure I took my trusty sword with me. Now, I didn't really have much other than my trusty sword and my helmet, but I knew that no matter what came my way, I would absolutely obliterate it as long as I became focused on the mission. So I knew that this was going to be something that I was going to have to face, but I didn't know exactly how or when it would happen. You see, as I was exploring downstairs, I realized more and more that many villagers had disappeared. I wasn't exactly sure where they'd gone or why they'd gone, but something told me that something was going on. So I needed to understand exactly what was wrong. So I decided to look around and see if there was something going on in this area. But to my surprise, I didn't really see much besides the odd villager who was trading. Then whilst I was exploring these things, that was when I noticed this thing out of... I wasn't exactly sure what he was doing because I wasn't exactly sure what this villager was doing because I couldn't really see him. But I did notice that he seemed to have been battle or war-torn, which was definitely quite scary for me. So I decided to give it a go and see exactly what his deal was. When I spoke to him, he said hello, and he then said, "Hey, don't go any further." He then mentioned, "You don't need to see what's there. Trust me." I nearly didn't make it out. The trees are alive, which was definitely very interesting. How on earth had the trees become alive? I couldn't really see anything that was very strange about the trees. I couldn't even see any saplings. But despite my past experiences with the trees myself, these trees seemed a bit more calm, and it definitely seemed a bit strange that we were looking at trees. So I decided to question him a little bit more, and he did say the trees can move and fight. We must destroy them. Now, I just simply blocked this area up because I thought he was going a bit crazy. But little did I know, I was going to figure out for sure that this man was not crazy at all. As I continued to go through the forest, I noticed that there were multiple signs that said no unauthorized persons allowed beyond this point. At first, I was bewildered and confused because I didn't really know exactly what that meant. But at the time, I realized that I was getting myself into something very interesting. I saw now that the signs had actually been placed there for my own safety. But of course, I didn't know that at the time. There was a villager who was standing there who seemed to be on guard for something, but I couldn't really tell exactly what was going on. He then said to me, "Don't go past this point. It's a hazardous zone. Trust me." He then said, "The trees have eyes. It is strange. Nobody will come back. Trust me." So after that exhilarating conversation, I realized that the trees were definitely watching me, my every move, and I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but I knew that I had to figure out a way to make sure that whatever trees were going on, they were figuring out exactly that they couldn't mess with me. Simply because I knew that if trees were alive, they would likely have the advantage as there's a sheer number of them. Nonetheless, I managed to find a very scary redstone trail. I wasn't exactly sure why I followed the trail, considering all of them said nobody will make it out alive, but that's when something really spooked me. As I was walking through the trail, I managed to see a tree that had which was definitely very scary. And as you can all see, the eyes didn't actually move at the start, but it was definitely very eerie because many of the trees seemed to be somewhat alive. Now, I didn't understand exactly what was going on. Why were the trees alive and why were they evil? It was definitely a very weird experience to say the least, and I knew that I wanted to be out of there as soon as possible, but I knew that also I wanted to get to the bottom of this because this was definitely something that was very intriguing. So I decided to make sure that I placed down as many torches as possible because either way I knew that something strange was going on. What I needed to do was I needed to go ahead and make sure that whatever was going on was something that was not out of the ordinary. That's when something else even crazier struck me. So I only looked away for a moment and then I couldn't believe my eyes. I saw trees that were actually moving. Now the crazy thing is that these were actual trees. They weren't actual trees like in the game Minecraft. They were definitely some kind of strange entity because some of them were small, whilst I did think I saw one that was in the back that was somewhat larger. But at the time I didn't really know exactly what I was seeing. The trees actually had arms and the leaves were green as the oak biome indicates. But it was definitely very strange because I didn't know if they would attack me straight away, if they were neutral mobs, or if they were ones that would try and kill me. Now, definitely the moment I got close to them, they did try and attack me, which was quite scary because I didn't know exactly how dangerous they were. The only lucky thing I had was the fact that these mobs were extremely slow, meaning that I could evade them with any basic maneuver. What was even crazier was that they weren't the only mobs to roam the plane. I did manage to see one larger creature, but it somehow managed to disappear off the radar. I wasn't exactly sure where it went, but there were a very, very large host of random creatures that had somehow made their way into the world. I kind of did want to see exactly what kind of damage these creatures would do, so I did actually let one hit me. It didn't do too much damage, but I didn't want to let it hit me anymore because I knew that the results could definitely be quite bad considering I had a very low food source. Although what was very interesting about these creatures is that the moment you kill them, you get a bunch of wood and a bunch of very useful materials. If they were part of Minecraft's core feature, it would definitely be interesting. But what I wanted to know was exactly how all those villagers managed to die, and that's when it hit me. The moment I came over this hill, I was confronted with a massive beast. I'm not even sure what happened or how badly my game glitched, but somehow I was spawned into a very, very scary design. You can all see now that this was a behemoth of a creature, and any moment near him would result in you losing a significant amount of your damage and getting poisoned a very large amount. It was definitely quite scary because this tree was larger than any Minecraft naturally spawning tree, pretty much larger than any biome itself, and the carrots that I was eating weren't really doing much to save the day. Even though they're not a very plentiful food, it was definitely quite scary. Like I said, the only thing that I had was luck, and like I said, it was definitely a lot of poison that ticked away at me. Luckily for me, I did have the ability to run away really quickly, but that didn't stop the trees from ganging up on me and a lot of them for spawning in. I now knew exactly what the villagers were so scared of, and I was guessing that what I just found was somewhat a safe house. But unfortunately, the villagers had already turned into zombies and they were pointing guns at me. Definitely a very crazy experience, but lets me know not to explore the forest at 3 AM.